Welcome to the Executive Lounge. I'm Inshira Ado. This is the Business Thought Leadership Program that brings you nuggets of insights from the lives of men and women who are trailblazing, building their own businesses, managing institutions right here at home and around the world. My guest today is an accountant, a passionate Ghanaian, and a consummate career woman. We'll be learning more about Ayesha Bedwei, tax partner at PwC. You're welcome to the Executive Lounge.
Thank you very much, Inshira.
I must first of all say that you have just set a record. You're completing the first sibling connection on the Executive Lounge because your sister Farida has been on the show and we had a good time.
That's good.
Wonderful.
So that should be the first of many records.
Absolutely. How does one become a partner? What did you have to do to become a partner at PwC?
I guess it's almost the same question as how does one become a CEO or how does one become a business leader? There are no shortcuts, and it really, in my case, and I'm sure I speak for a lot of other business people who consider themselves fairly successful. It's through a lot of perseverance and hard work. There's no way around it. When we are younger, we think that, the route is straightforward and, I want to achieve these things and I should be there if I do this. But there's so many twists and turns that show up in your life, especially from a business perspective. And so there is no shortcut. And I mean that quite literally. You may have to take on work that others don't want to do. You may have to, go the extra mile just to, prove yourself that you're worthy. You cannot have something until you become worthy of that thing or you become that thing. And I think in order to become a successful business leader, you have to start thinking like one, you have to start behaving like one long before you become one.
Wow,
yeah.
That's interesting. Now we'll get into all of that interesting answer and glean more wisdom from that. But I want to take a trip back to your upbringing, something that Farida did share, that you both were not born in Ghana and you lived most of your life in the Caribbean, changing schools every time your parents had to move. How do you think that has put you in the stead that keeps you going today?
Well, I think, it's multifaceted. So I think the obvious advantage from my perspective is that it made me a very agile person. We speak about agility these days and flexibility, they are the buzzwords, in the business world. But I think having to constantly get used to new surroundings and having to constantly learn to socialize with new people makes you develop a skill where you don't even realize you're developing it. And I think that has helped me today in the sense that I find it a lot easier to work with people of different, walks of life, different cultures. I think I'm more tolerant and accepting of people. And also I have developed, these are skills that are intangible, that enable me easily move from one world to another. And this is all, I attribute all of this to my upbringing and kind of the way it set me up for what I'm doing today.
Okay. So somewhere along the line, you all moved back to Ghana and then you went through school. Tell me about that time. I mean, moving back home, did you suffer a culture shock among your own?
I mean, Ghana is always a culture shock. And it was even more of a culture shock in 1988 or late 88, early 89 when we moved back. If you remember Ghana at that time, we had one radio station.
That's true.
One TV station.
True.
Many of the things we consider normal now in terms of, access to certain types of food, music, magazines were not available at that time. In fact, I remember that for us in secondary school, and maybe you were the same, we saw Togo as a place to go. Shop. Remember?
To go and shop. Get some nice jeans.
Get some nice jeans and t-shirts. So it was a bit of a culture shock because obviously in the Caribbean, they have a strong influence from the States. So things were obviously widely available. And in between our travels, where my father was posted to different countries, we had to spend some time in the UK, where I actually had to go to school. So if we were waiting for a 6 or 9 month period for him to get posted or for him to settle down, would have to be in the UK as kind of like a holding area for us. So coming to Ghana was a bit of a culture shock. It had to take some getting used to. But I think for me, I was really happy to finally be near my relatives. I never really had relatives in that sense. Being a foreigner in a strange country, living that expat life as we see it now, is not as glamorous or as exciting, you know, as always. And from a child's perspective, I also wanted relatives. I also wanted to see my cousins. I wanted to know who these people were. And they seemed to be like a distant story my parents used to tell me. So coming back to Ghana, actually meeting these people who look like me, who I have, you know, DNA in common with, was really a novelty, and it was really nice. It was really exciting for me in my 11-year-old mind, you know. So that was one of the things I was really excited about.
I mean, you talked about the fact that, you know, in between postings, you would go to the UK, you know, that kind of like a layover location. Someone would look at it and say, well, you used to do these things in a place they would like to be in, and glamorize or wish they could live the life of an expat. Help us appreciate what for you was the challenging aspects of it.
So I think maybe before I answer that question, I think we always glamorize and idealize things that we don't have or we aspire to. You know, our lens is skewed to only the positive. And we don't realize that life is made up of positive and negative. Every single experience, every single person is not just good or bad. Both elements exist in every part of life. So that kind of lifestyle, yes, it has its exciting bits. So of course, being a child at 10, 11, getting to travel with your parents, you know, getting to see new things is exciting, but also having to, again, get used to a new environment. One thing I remember very clearly at that time was that there was a high rate of crime. Children were being kidnapped and being raped, being attacked. And so my mother would always make sure she would walk me to school, and she would be waiting for me at the gate when I'm coming out. And there was one time she got there and she didn't see me, and she totally panicked for like 10 minutes and realized that we had just gone across the street. So there were those little nuances. Obviously, that did not occur in the Caribbean, where life is just island life. It's very relaxed. Your neighbors are your friends. Hardly any crime, a very open sort of lifestyle. And then we are in the UK, where there's extra heightened sensibilities, extra caution. So that was one thing I remember, the crime, and just having to be careful and being aware of it at that age. And then also the racial undertones. I mean, I was called Paki once, and I didn't really understand what that was. And that was a racial negative slur for Pakistani. Now, I'm not Pakistani, but the fact that my skin tone is darker than a white person, you know, made me experience that. It wasn't, I would say it wasn't extensive, but it still made me question, why am I being called that? So it's, you know, little things like that that kind of bring you down to reality of living in a country that is not yours, and where most people don't look like you in terms of skin color and racial makeup.
So being home was a part of your life that you really relished? Oh,
yes, I did. You know, apart from the fact that my extended family was here, I was not a minority. And, you know, this is my country, you know, and I think there's something to be said for being in your country and being made to feel like you belong. Of course, that is also not perfect. I'm not trying to also idealize that as well, because I have many friends who still live in foreign countries, who still live in the UK, who live in the US, and have this dream or this ideal of coming back home. It's also not as smooth or as idealistic as they think it is. You have to temper these ideas with reality as well. But I think that for me personally, the best place to be is in my home country, and that's where I am now.
It certainly is the best place to be, warts and all.
Yes, warts and all.
You know, so you did secondary school here in Ghana, and then you went back to the UK for tertiary education.
I did, and even that was an accident.
It was an accident. Share that story.
Because that wasn't my intention. I mean, I was excitedly looking forward to going to Legon University with my friends, and, you know, that was my plan. And then in 1995, when I finished my A-levels, the university was on strike.
You were caught up in that strike?
Yes.
There was like a 2-year backlog.
There was like a 2-year backlog of students, and there was a strike. And it just was not feasible or practical for me to have to wait, you know, that long. At that time, the UK universities were aggressively coming to Ghana and looking for students. I happened to get a scholarship, and off I went in 6 months. So in 6 months, my life changed totally from what I thought it would be. It was not in my plans at all, you know. So, but then again, things happened for a reason, and off I went to the UK and went to university, and then started my professional life there.
Right. Now, At that time, so you first went into you were in the UK
Yeah.
as a young child, and then as an adult, you go back where you no longer had your mom waiting at the gates
No.
for you at school, and you had to make your own decisions and live by them. How different was that part of your life? And did the fears of the past haunt you or make you more aware in that time?
I think the issues from the past, or the fears from the past, did not haunt me, but as you said, made me more aware of the realities of living once again in a foreign country. But I'm very grateful for the time I had in Ghana. Coming to Ghana at 11 years old and going to school in Ghana and experiencing the realities of Ghana, I think toughen you up as a person, okay? If you're in a situation where, or in a country where you don't have everything accessible to you as you may have been used to, you learn to make do with what you have, you learn to be imaginative, you learn not to be somebody who watches TV all the time. Like I said, we had one station. What do? You do other things, you interact with people, you play games, you make friends, you spend time outside. That's what you interact with your family a bit more. So doing that, and also for me, the work ethic, right? So I've always been somebody who, was very focused on my personal development and also my career. So I remember when I was 16, there was a trade fair, and I went there and I asked for a job, and I got a job, and I worked at trade fair for about 2 weeks. And I made whatever money, I don't remember how much it was, they paid me, So when I went to the UK and I was on my own, within 2 months of getting there, I got a job, a part-time job at a cashier, as a cashier at a checkout supermarket. And I was on it. I was, going for my lectures, I was staying on campus, I was working my part-time job. And I believe these kind of experiences build you up as a person. You have to realize that nothing in this life is free. You have to work for everything that you have. And I think it makes you a stronger person as well. So I did every job going. I was a cashier, I worked in menswear, I was folding shirts, I was doing changing rooms, I was doing stock rooms, so many different experiences. So going back at 18, which is when I went to the UK, I came back as a young adult. And I think I matured and grew up some more there. But I couldn't have done that successfully without the foundation that I had, not only from my parents, but also living in Ghana, where things are not as easy as they are in the Western world. Things don't work as they should all the time. I have this joke that if I look at my counterparts in PwC in the UK or the US, we both start work at 8. But I may have done 20 things before sitting at my desk at 8. Because if I turn on the tap, the water may not come, the lights may be off, something will be happening in my compound, something will be happening somewhere. But for them, for the most part, they open the tap, the water comes. They get in the car, get on the train is on time, they get to where they have to be, they're in the office. So that makes you somebody who is agile. That's
it's
real
quite interesting
agility,
that
yes.
you look at it like that, because in Ghana we've perfected the art of ranting about everything.
We have.
And the perspective that, I'm more agile because of the dysfunctions that I have to deal with. If only we can start thinking about things differently.
Definitely. I'm not a fan of ranting. I think it's a waste of my energy, which I like to conserve and utilize as and when necessary, right? But I do believe that when you find yourself in an imperfect situation, it makes you more innovative, and you come up with systems and ways of making things work. And so if you put somebody who hasn't been in that situation by you or with you, you are probably more likely to be a bit more successful than that person when faced with difficult situations. If you are faced with a difficult situation, like the train's not working in the UK, that's not a big deal. You just get off the train and walk. Or you find another way to go around a situation. You won't stand there and complain that, oh my God, the train's not on time, what are we going to do? I've been in cars that have broken down, the roads are blocked all of a sudden for no reason. Where I went to school in Accra, St. Mary's, in Kolegon, or near Kolebu, roads were blocked many times because of funerals and with no explanation, no reason. This is just how it is. So, like I'm saying, the difficult situations do make you a stronger person, make you more agile and more flexible. So you're always thinking of a solution. Okay, this is wrong. How can I fix it? This is wrong. What's the other way around it? And not standing in one place and just whining and complaining.
At what point in your life would you place a finger on the ability to be in constant solution mode? Was this prior to moving to Ghana, or would it be when you moved back home in the late 80s?
I think it's when I moved back home in the late 80s, because a number of things were wrong with the society at the time. And I think as a country, we're now trying to, we were still kind of under military rule.
We were
under military rule.
In the last few years.
But I think a better part of military rule than had happened before, which was very chaotic with lots of coup d'etats and so on and so forth. So I think we're now trying to build ourselves back up as a country, but there's still a number of things wrong with our society, from an infrastructure perspective, from a freedom of speech perspective. There's so many issues, and I think that's when you go into solution mode. You see your parents go into solution mode. You also start to think, okay, I'm in a school where sometimes there's no running water. What do I do? Or I'm in a school where, you have cheating scandals. You hear WAEC papers, what's going to happen? So from a young age, you're already socialized into thinking that problems happen, how do we fix them? Problems happen, we don't think that everything works as it should, because we don't see things working as they should all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went into professional life, practice, got your ACCA, and then one day you're like, time to come back home. Did you plan the return, or you just took advantage of a situation based on the dream you've always had of coming back home?
I think I planned the return. So maybe I didn't have a date for return when I left, but I knew there was definitely going to be a return.
Right.
Okay. And initially, I thought my return would be as soon as I finished university. Of course, that was not the wisest thing, and and I value the years of experience that I had in the UK. So my plan of return probably started happening 2 years before the actual return. So there was a plan, because I just felt, yes, I'm in a great society, everything works, I'm getting experience, but my heart still belongs in Ghana, and I want to be there and make some kind of difference. And we say these things, you don't know how you're going to make the difference. You don't know what you're going to do, but you need to go, And so, I planned it, and the time came, and I left.
I so identify with that.
Yeah, and my friends were all confused. But why are you going now? And why are you going? And so what is there? Are you sure you should be going? What are you going to do? I can understand. It seems very like a foreign concept. It seems like a big risk, but it's one of the best decisions I made in my life.
I'm very sure of that. Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'd like to get the sense of the whole glass ceiling situation, the concept of the glass ceiling, the fact that you're a high-flying professional, hardworking, working in a space where people tend not to value people who are different from them. And I'm not even going to come at you from the perspective of being a woman, but I mean, how do you build resilience in an environment like that? Thank you for joining us so far. We're taking a break. When we come back, there's a whole lot more to learn from Ayesha Bedwei. She's a tax partner at PwC, and this is the Executive Lounge. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Executive Lounge with me, Inshira Addo, and my guest, Ayesha Bedwei. She is the tax partner at PwC. Ayesha, before we went on the break, I asked about your life in the UK. I really would like to learn about that, because having lived a little bit in the UK and watching how people have to work extra hard to rise, I'd like to glean some lessons from your experience. Was it easy to rise through the ranks? What kind of things did you have to put up with to make your mark?
Well, if I think back to my first job, my first professional job, after finishing university, so I went straight into writing my accountancy qualification exams, ACCA, and as is the practice, we need to, start working as we do that. So I got into a medium-sized accountancy firm in London's West End.
Okay.
I had about 5 or 6 partners, about 150 staff. So I started at the bottom, as we do, as a trainee auditor, right? And it was interesting. I learned a lot, but it was very much a meritocracy. I did not experience any racism of any sort. And maybe that's because the firm was a Jewish firm. The part that it was founded by 2 Jewish Holocaust survivors who came to the UK, and many of the partners were Jewish people. One Asian partner, and yeah, we had a good racial mix. When I say that, I mean we had people from different ethnic backgrounds, so not necessarily, you know, African descent or Caribbean descent, but we had people from Eastern Europe. At the time when Slobodan Milosevic was doing the atrocities in Kosovo, we did actually have somebody from Serbia who was there, and yeah, so I didn't actually experience any racism in that sense. It was very much, you know, come to work, you are being trained, you know, and it was really interesting. I also got to meet other Holocaust survivors who actually were branded like cows with their numbers on their, you know. So it made me realize, you know, again, different people, their experiences, and how someone could survive such, you know, horrible experiences and, you know, build life from scratch in a new country and actually be wealthy, you know. All very much based on, you know, how much time you invest in yourself and what you do and the ability to rise. So working in the firm was largely positive from my perspective, and I learned the foundations of my profession, which is very necessary for any practicing accountant. Then I made a decision to leave the firm after a couple of years and go into industry. And industry, by industry I mean working as a, you know, a finance manager or an accountant in a non-accounting firm or non-accounting organization. So I was a finance manager in a company that provided training, professional training to various large companies in the UK and beyond. So I had set up the finance function from scratch, and basically I was everything. I was doing payroll, I was doing, you know, accounting, I was doing bookkeeping, I was doing taxes, I was doing everything. And again, a great experience to learn all aspects of the profession from a different angle. And then I made it into a large multinational insurance company when it was time to move. And again, here I was in a large organization where I sometimes felt swallowed, you know, coming from my smaller one, which probably had about 30 people, to a large organization which had about 2,000 people. Now there, I could feel that I was different, because in that building of 2,000 people, there were 3 black people, me, the cleaner, the security guard.
Wow.
That was it.
How did that feel?
It was a bit jarring, you know, when, you know, because for the most part, you know, I'm going through life doing my duties, going to work, I'm enjoying it, and I'm kind of oblivious to the fact that I am the only one who is different, because I wasn't made to feel that way. And maybe because, again, being brought up to be confident, proud of who I am, and having that grounding in my own country, right, also contributed to, you know, just me being comfortable with myself. So sometimes it would just come to my attention, or I'll just remember that, wow, I'm the only black person here apart from the cleaner and the security guard. You know, that says a lot about diversity. This was back in 2001. You know, is it that the organization is so far out of reach from other people who are like me? Are they not making enough efforts, or do people just feel excluded? So sometimes these thoughts would come to my mind, but again, I didn't experience any overt, you know, racism. You know, I very much, it was a meritocracy, and I was rewarded, you know, for the work that I did, and I was happy doing what I was doing. But I still felt it was getting to time for me to go back to my own country, you know, and make a tangible difference. It's very difficult to feel you're making a difference in an established society where everything works, and actually where you are not really one of them in that sense. Okay, so I was looking forward to coming back to my own environment, which obviously needed a lot of work and still does, and seeing how I can make a tangible change in that environment.
And you're a tax partner, and I'd like us to jump into that aspect. You're quite passionate about taxation, and it's not something that you would find a lot of people excited about. But in talking to you, why is taxation so important to a country?
All right, so Insha, before I decided to, so you know, in our profession, you can decide to specialize in so many different areas. And I felt it was time for me to specialize in my profession. And I actually did a lot of research to figure out which area am I going to specialize in. So there was a reason why I chose tax. And that reason was because it's constantly evolving, which means you're constantly learning. okay? And I didn't want to be doing something I didn't feel challenged by. I didn't want to feel like I was just plugging numbers into spreadsheets, which is what I felt I was doing in my previous job. I wanted to feel like I was actually making a difference and actually improving myself and learning. So with tax, because obviously, first of all, every country does have a tax system and people do have to pay tax. And because commerce is developing and countries are growing, tax systems have to develop and grow as well to keep up with that. And so that's why I chose to go into that profession. And it was, again, another good decision that I made.
Right.
Now, you know, countries cannot run themselves without the individuals in those countries contributing to the running of that country, and that's through taxation. So as old as, you know, recorded history, even in the Bible, if we go back, and, you know, even before that, in the, you know, kingdoms of the serfs and the landlords and all of that, people have had to contribute part of whatever they earn towards running of the state, because we all live here. We all share the resources, which are limited. We all use the roads. We all breathe the air. We all live here. So we must contribute to the running of the country. And that is why we must all pay our share of the taxes. Now, I know the argument that a lot of people have, especially in Africa, because I've spoken to a number of groups of people across a number of African countries. And the argument is always, we don't see what the government is doing with our taxes. So why should we pay taxes? And I always say, I feel your pain. I'm a citizen too. My job, let's get it right, I'm not a tax official working for the government. I'm actually a tax advisor advocating for you, advising you to make sure you pay the correct amount of tax, no more and no less, okay? But if we all have that attitude that we don't see what the government is doing, so we're not going to pay, who is going to pay? So there are two issues here. Yeah. You do your part, because when you pay your taxes, you actually can hold them accountable.
And say, you
I have
needed
paid,
to do
yes,
A, B,
I've
and
paid
C.
you X amount. What are you doing with, what do I have to show? Or what do you have to show for the money that I have paid as a citizen of this country? The second issue is that now we need to make sure that our governments are actually tangibly accounting to us about what they've done with the money they've collected from us. Okay, and that's how the system should work. But to actually just cop out and say, well, I don't see what's being done, I'm not going to pay, is really not the right thing to do, and it's really not fair to the rest of the people. So
instead of tax apathy, there should be more engagement.
There should be a lot of engagement and a lot of education. So if you look at a lot of the developed countries, they've even progressed. Let me not even go far. In Rwanda, they've progressed to e-filing a few years ago. So it's possible for a citizen to actually do their own filing, have a good understanding, because the information is out there. The steps are online, so you can actually file your own return yourself. But I think a lot of people in Ghana and a few other West African countries, if I just stay, you know, in the sub-region, feel that, you know, tax is something that alienates them. They feel lost. Some people even get scared when we start having this kind of conversation, because they don't even know where to start. And so rather than, you know, starting and getting confused, they just decide not to do anything at all. So I think there needs to be a lot more education, a lot more engagement, because we really are the partners to governments on this. We need each other. They need us and we need them. Okay. But we are vital parts as citizens to the whole picture. It's
interesting you chose to specialize in taxation because of the change. And change truly is the constant now. And I mean, there was a conversation I overheard at the recently held Commonwealth Association of Tax Administrators conference here in Accra. And the issue of cross-border trade and its impact on taxation. So today we want at some point to have this free trade agreement across Africa. How do you tax services that originate from one country but is delivered somewhere else? Are these challenges that you come across and have to advise on? Yes.
I mean, cross-border taxation is, I guess, maybe the center of most of the work that we do, because we have a lot of, or I have a lot of multinational clients. So of course, they may be doing business in multiple locations, and you need to maybe provide services to someone in Ghana, you're based in the UK, or you're in Nigeria doing work for somebody based in Togo. So, you know, there are ways to tax that, and that's usually through a foreign withholding tax system, which works. But the only issue I think that the various tax authorities have is correct monitoring. And again, if taxpayers were adequately captured in a database which could be tracked, then this wouldn't be so much of a headache, okay? Because I'm sure you know about the recent TIN registration and all of that. So imagine we were all registered with TIN numbers and we're on the system. And so if that was linked to bank accounts, which it is in other countries.
In fact, I just got a message from my bank that I need to stop by and add my TIN to the records.
Good. And in other countries, they also link to social security numbers. Okay, you'll be able to have an idea of the transactions that people are getting into. Even if we just take it from a company level, okay, let's forget about individuals. You know what companies are doing because they're on your system, so you can track and see these are the transactions that they undertook this year, and then tax them appropriately. They haven't actually already paid taxes themselves. So I think one of the challenges we have in Africa is record keeping. You look at our history, it's all oral history. Hardly anything is written down. It is reflected in the way we do business now as well. So we don't track a lot of information. We are not a record keeping people. So that makes it difficult as well. It's difficult for government to know how much tax they are not collecting, because that will help them with projecting, or help them with budgeting. And then maybe the government's plan for Ghana Beyond Aid could become a reality quicker than we anticipate, because then they would know who to focus on, who's not paying taxes, or which companies are doing X, Y, or Z, to be able to address and harness the amounts of money that are sitting out there.
Sounds like there's an upside for everyone to pay their taxes.
Yeah.
The reforms we have, some may call it belated. Do you think the horse is bolted? Will we ever get it right?
I think we certainly have to try, and I think we are making progress. I think maybe the issue that people have is they want the progress to be quicker. Okay. So that's what I'm saying, that we all have a part to play. If we do our part, then the government will be in a better position to do their part and do so quicker. And I do understand, again, I keep saying that, I'm saying all these things as an individual, a citizen of Ghana, as somebody who advises my clients and people I know to do the correct thing, do the right thing. And knowing that, look, it's going to benefit us all in the long run. Yes, nobody likes paying taxes. Nobody likes seeing the money that they earn divided into how many quarters and giving a certain amount away. But I believe if we did that, then we would see, the improvements we want to see, our roads, what have you, and be able to hold people, more accountable, the people in office that we elected accountable. So
we pay our taxes, which is a good thing, and the government does its job, and we all live happily ever after.
No such thing. No such thing.
But what about your job do you love, apart from the fact that there's a constant change and you need to keep learning?
I would say, one thing I must say is that I'm very fortunate to be in an organization like PwC.
Really?
Yeah, you see, I think sometimes when we are younger, we are very short-sighted in what we want to achieve in our careers. And most of the time, we are driven by money. But after a while, money is not enough. You as an individual want to feel fulfilled. You want to feel you have some kind of challenge to aspire to. You want to have some kind of leadership position. You want to know that you are not going to go stale. Now, an organization like PwC, and I mean, fair enough, the other big four as well as other, in the UK, they call them magic circle firms, so maybe not so big, but mainstream. The nature of our profession is that we invest a lot in people. Okay, so in PwC, I can't tell you how many training opportunities, leadership opportunities. I'm a tax partner, but I'm also the corporate responsibility and diversity and inclusion leader for Ghana and for West Africa.
Wow.
And there are many other roles that I've fulfilled and played in the past, and also some opportunities coming forward as well. So it's all up to you. I had a question some years ago, or maybe a year ago, from a young man in the university, and he said, so when you reach partner, then what? Have you accomplished self-actualization? I said, well, no, it depends on you. Are you just okay just being a partner with nothing, doing nothing? I said, because it's at this point that I get opportunities. For example, this year I was invited to be part of the T20. Now, the T20 advised the G20. PwC is the only firm that has been asked to be part of this group of people advising the G20. So it's opportunities like that, being asked to speak at the World Economic Forum, being involved in, advisory committees of universities, helping develop curriculum, helping develop young leaders, helping solve some of the world's biggest problems, helping solve problems within the firm. Our firm is in 187 countries. We have almost 300,000 people, maybe about 200,000 people. You can just imagine the various cycles we go through. Education, training, leadership programs. I was on a leadership program last year with 59 other tax partners from all over PwC globally. And it was a leadership program for tax partners who potentially could lead client accounts in some years to come. And we had to go to Singapore, we had to go to Paris, we had to go to New York City, and then we had to graduate. These are not opportunities that every organization gives their people. They are not. So it's being in the firm and also in the profession I'm in, adding the constant change, the evolvement of the profession, and also the ability to solve problems for my clients, because that's what essentially I'm doing. They are coming to me and saying, I want to undertake this $50 billion transaction. The $50 billion transaction, you can imagine that tax will be a large number.
That's right.
And so they must understand what are the tax implications of this transaction in your country. If I do A, what is the result? Because tax is such that the name you call a thing can have a different tax impact. If I call that thing insurer, I could pay $5 million. But if I call it Ayesha, I could pay $1 million. So mere classification has an impact. So that's how important tax is,
So it's not as scary as we think. It's
not.
The better your understanding of it, the happier you'll be.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And the less scared you'll be.
Yes, very, very much so. But, becoming partner, having more influence, opportunities to learn. Now you're at a point where, for the lack of a better expression, you're not being led. You're now leading other people. What are some of the things you think you picked along the way that keeps you fired up and keeps you going?
Well, first of all, understanding that everybody's different. And I think that's the thing. When you are leading a group of people, that's when you really appreciate diversity in character, in thoughts, in ideas, in issues, in just outlooks in life. So managing people has been one of the most interesting and fulfilling parts of my job. Because my business is based on people. PwC doesn't sell pieces of paper. We sell ideas, we sell knowledge. And so that has been really something that I've really enjoyed so far. And also helping those people develop and grow. Like I said, we invest a lot in our people. So being part of that process means quite a lot to me. And so managing people within my firm and my team also leads to managing my clients. Because I'm dealing with clients who are, talking about very serious transactions where if I get an opinion wrong, it's costing them money. So obviously the integrity of what I'm doing is paramount. Technically, it must be sound. Then forget about that. Now dealing with the client themselves. You need to deliver on time. You need to communicate. Sometimes clients, require that you go above and beyond. You need to maintain the relationship. You need to listen to them. They need to be able to build that level of trust with you such that when things go wrong, and they will go wrong, you'll be able to, pick yourself back up from that because that trust has been built. So your client who has built a relationship with you, who sees you as a friend, is more likely to forgive you when things go wrong. They know that, well, things go wrong, let me just deal with it. As opposed to a client who you didn't invest time with, who sees you as very distant and separate from them.
And only hear from you when there's an invoice.
I know, yes.
So relationships are important.
Very important, yes.
All right. Now, in your time, as we get ready to wrap up, you may be classed as an exception to the norm, if that is, and permit me for probably a long-winded question. You pretty much rose through the ranks without much prejudice standing in your way. Was that for everyone around you who may have similar background in terms of gender and race?
Within my firm or just
within
people
your
that I
firm
know?
and in your career and the places that you
Yeah.
work.
Within my
Except,
firm.
of course, minus the West End firm that you work at. That's an exception.
I mean, to be honest, I can't speak for people outside of my firm, and I'm sure they may have experienced different things, and I think they have, of course, and we share some of these stories. Within my firm, no, your gender does not limit you from progressing. It's very much a meritocracy.
Okay.
So that is not an issue. I think the issue that we should be discussing is how do the people who are in the minority, which in this case you're referring to women, do they feel included as part of the business? We need to look at the fact that you don't have a lot of female leaders, which is what you're alluding to, and you need to ask yourself the question, why? Sometimes it's not because of discrimination. It's just because as women, sometimes we have to juggle many balls, and some of those balls include family, children, responsibilities, extended family, all of these kinds of things. Now, it's very difficult juggling all those balls, and if you don't have the support from your spouse or you don't have a good support system, you can't juggle it all. Now, you are probably going to drop one of those balls, and that's probably going to be work. But if you work somewhere where allowances are made, there's flexible working, maybe there's even a childcare facility where you work, those kind of things make it easier for you to stay, and that's the inclusion part. And so I think that's what we should be looking at. It's fine having the people represented, but are they staying? And are you making the situation comfortable for them to stay? So in my case, yes, I always say that the person who supported me the most to help me rise up the ranks was my boss, and he was a man. It was a man who supported me. He saw the potential in me when I didn't, as he did in many of my other colleagues. And he supported us to get to where we are now. And I am in turn supporting and mentoring my staff as is expected of me. So I think that it is all about being sensitive to the needs of people who are in the minority, in this case, women.
Wow. We're going to take a short break. When we come back and as we wrap up, I'd like to pick your thoughts on an extension to this conversation, which really is about how should we go about improving inclusion? And I'll get your thoughts on whether it should be legislated.
Okay.
We'll be right back after this. This is the Executive Lounge. Welcome back to the Executive Lounge. My name is Inshirado, and my guest is Ayesha Bedwei. She is tax partner at PwC, one of the big four, or the Magic Circle firms, as they're called.
Big Four.
The Big Four. You prefer Big Four?
It's Big Four. Magic Circle is below.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, so Big Four.
That's Big Four.
And then the
There are
Magic
others.
Circle.
There are others, yeah.
Okay, so you are above the magic.
Oh, yes. We are.
You do big things.
We do.
Right. I actually saw one of your offices in Basel a few years ago, and I was like, these guys, they're not small crowd.
No, we're not.
Right. You know, the concept of inclusion, I'm not too sure. A few years ago, I think in 2015, one of the big four, could well be PwC, said that, you're doing away with hiring people based on qualification and things like that. I'm not too sure if it was,
I don't think it was us. I think it might have been Deloitte. I think
Okay.
I heard that. Yeah.
Right. And this was because they believe that, there's a lot of good out there. And along the lines of inclusion, do you think it should be legislated?
So it depends on the country, the environment. So, for example, if I take South Africa, it is legislated. Those are the Black economic empowerment ratios and regulations that are in place. So it is legislated because they are coming from a history of systemic racism and apartheid. So they are trying to correct the wrongs of the past and give the oppressed people, the Black people, a chance to also have access to what their white counterparts do. So it is legislated.
Okay.
And that's on the racial side. And I think even in the US, in certain states and regarding certain facilities, I suppose university and so on, there is affirmative action where Black people are given certain scholarships and access which others are not. So I guess it depends, right? In a society like Ghana, maybe what should be legislated has got to do with, motherhood, maternity leave, and those kinds of related issues. I don't think we have much around, the race side, so that's not really an area that we look at. So it depends. I would say some of it may have to be. I mean, I think what should be legislated has got to do with corporate responsibility. I think that companies in Ghana should be mandated to give some kind of contribution back to society, whether it's by employing disabled people, which I think we do not do enough of, whether it is by recycling so that we can support the environment better than we currently do and deal with the waste problem that we have. So some of those issues, in order to achieve tangible results, may have to be legislated, Yeah.
Wow. It's quite interesting you say so. And in as much as I'm a bit of an optimist, and I believe in certain cases we are making progress, you just made it quite obvious that in terms of inclusion, we're probably quite far off. And there are undertones that we're not really dealing with. For example, you talked about the affirmative action situation in the States. I mean, under Kwame Nkrumah, we had some program that made it possible for a lot of people from the northernmost
region,
part of the country to get education. We find there's a lot of talk about tribalism and things like that. Even though they may not be overt and as oppressive as apartheid, should we consider on those in terms of binding the people together as one nation, maybe consider legislating that?
I think that'll be difficult to do. Maybe I'll share what I learned about migration issues, how they deal with them in Finland and in Sweden, where they've taken taken a number of migrants as a result of, these Syrian issues that are happening. So what they do is they have culture days. So, people from a different country have come into a particular town, which probably was predominantly homogeneous and had only nationals in that town. Now you bring people who have a different racial background and also religion. How do you integrate? So they have these culture days or gatherings once a month or every quarter where they share food, they share stories, they share the culture, and then it fosters, that kind of unity, because the issue with differences is that people dehumanize other people. You don't see them the same as yourself, but if you actually learn and realize that, oh, he's a doctor, I'm a doctor, just like he speaks a different language, or he actually has 3 kids, I have 3 kids, you find those areas of commonality. So I don't think with issues, as you've said, to do with, tribal differences or maybe access to certain facilities, it should necessarily always be legislated. We have to approach it very carefully because you could breed resentment amongst the people who have traditionally always had the access, So it has to be looked at very carefully. But I think on the, I don't want to say softer side, but in terms of, realizing our humanity, having something like those culture days that I've said have really helped to integrate that particular town in Finland, and I think it's working. And so they see each other as the same, and then they have language lessons to learn Finnish so they can also fit into the society. So that's probably something that we could consider.
Interesting idea, worth exploring. Final question, and I can't do away with, one of the 17 goals in the Sustainable Development Goals is gender equality. Is it achievable? Will we ever get there?
I like the way gender equality has become a buzz phrase, and everybody's always focused on the numbers. We need more women in board positions. We need more women in leadership positions. Why are there no women in these positions? I think we need to be careful it doesn't become a numbers game. Again, I would go back and ask the question, why are the women not in those positions? Is it because they are being overtly discriminated against? Is there an old boys club that is saying, we're not going to allow any women here? Or has it also got to do with the fact that maybe some women have made the choice that the burdens they carry are too heavy to add this work component to it as well? Because as much as we may try to have positive practices and policies in our workplaces, diversity, inclusion, and so on, and again, I champion that in PwC, we cannot change what happens in the home culturally. I cannot change the fact that I may do everything to keep you in the office, to keep you and make you feel valued and included, but maybe your spouse is just saying, no, I don't want you to work. And there's nothing I can do about that. So I think we need to ask the questions very carefully before just trying to fill in the numbers and say, yes, we've achieved it. We've achieved gender equality and we have 50 women in the boardroom and 50 men. You know, is that really what we want without knowing whether the women want to be there?
So we should go beyond just the numbers and try and fix the other things that impact on it.
I think so. I think it's important because every woman has a choice. Every woman should have a choice. You know, if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, I salute you, but it should be your choice, not because you feel you're being forced into that position. And if you want to be somebody pursuing your career, it should be your choice, and you should feel supported. And if you feel at any point that I actually don't want to do this anymore, I want to do something else. I want to do something that matters to me. I want to be at home with my children. I mean, I think that should be your choice too, and you should not be shamed. I see and hear a lot of shaming about women who have made the choice to stay at home or have made the choice to cut short their careers to be with their children. There's too much shaming around that, and I think it comes back down to what is the woman's choice? What does she want to do? So gender equality, yes, is a great goal to have. I don't think anybody should be discriminated against. Women should be given equal opportunity. There's no reason why a woman should be denied an opportunity to do a job that she's capable of doing. But we should not get caught up in the numbers and remember that it has to be her choice to do so.
Wonderful. Well, Ayesha, thank you so much for making time to join us on the Executive Lounge.
Thank you very much, Ayesha.
5 takeouts after every conversation that's as engaging as this. Number 1 is that you must develop agility. The fact that Ayesha had to live in different places, change schools, make new friends, you needed to adjust and get going when the situation changes. Number 2 is that in that you will be able to develop tolerance and you expose yourself to more people. Have an open mind, very little prejudice. It helps you learn more about people and become a better person. Number 3 is that as you rise, teach one. So each one teach one. Someone will give you an opportunity to grow. When you're growing, remember not to leave the people behind as you go, because it's a baton. You hand that down to someone else, and they also do that. In fact, that's the only way you got the growth opportunity that you got. Number 4 is that do things because you want to do them. Make the decision. Decide what you want out of life and pursue it. And the final thing is that love what you do and be challenged by something. And the challenge of the changes and the engagement of taxation is what inspired Ayesha to decide to specialize in taxation. And she's the partner at PwC in charge of taxation. So, few lessons there. I'm sure there's a lot more that I didn't mention. But catch the replay and also follow the show on YouTube. We're back again with the Executive Lounge. Until then, a big thank you to Ayesha Bedwei and to you for viewing, and to the crew and our friends at Villa Monticello. My name is Ayesha. Go forward, make rain. Shalom.